I would say that gold would be way down on my list as a store of value. I mean, I would much prefer owning 100 acres of land near here in Nebraska, or an apartment house, or an index fund. Gold, we'll say, was freed up 30 odd years ago, but it adjusted to a market that still, if you go back to 1900, you were talking $20 gold. Well, you take 20 to 400 in 100 years. The Dow went from 60 to 12 or 13,000, and then 12,000 or whatever it might have been in that same period, and paid you dividends during the time you owned it. It was 66, I think, at the start of the century, and I forget what it ended, but it's 11 or 12,000. And like I say, it was paying you something every quarter during that period. And if you own gold, you paid $20 in 1900 or thereabouts, and then we'll say you had it $400 100 years later. And in the meantime, you paid insurance and perhaps some storage cost. It really is not a store of value, and I'm not arguing for paper money, but if you're worried about paper money, and I think it makes a lot of sense to worry about paper money over long periods of time, but it's just about the last thing I would want to own under those circumstances. A farm has utility, an apartment house has utility, a business will produce earnings, and to some businesses will produce them in real terms as they go along. I'd rather have the ability to sell people a pound of candy 20 years from now, and if they're dealing in seashells, I'll get an appropriate number of seashells instead of paper money for it. But I don't see gold as a store of value, and the truth is it hasn't worked very well. But forget about whether it's worked well the last 100 years or the last 50 years or the last 10 years. I see no reason, why it would work well in the future. I forget whether we're turning out about 3,000 or 4,000 tons of gold a year. We take it out of the ground in South Africa and we put it in the ground at Fort Knox or someplace, or in the New York Fed. I mean, and it doesn't do much along the way for anybody.